Oh, and we're live as I drop the mic. I am Lori, and we are live at the PPAI Expo in Las Vegas, and I am here with four amazing content contributors, and we are going to talk today about how to create content and build your brand. So I am joined today by Taylor Bors from American Solutions for Business, Kirby Hasseman from Hasseman Marketing, Meg Erber from SNS Activewear, and Cliff Quicksell from Cliff Quicksell Associates. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here. We're all exhausted. It has been a long day on the show floor. So thank you for taking time out to spend with us. So the first question I have is, there was a time when content consisted of blog posts, and that was pretty. Today we have blogs, we have videos, we have podcasts. What are some important things for people to consider as they're deciding what avenue to pursue? We'll start with
I
you,
can
Taylor.
start, of course. So the first thing that I would consider is, what do you love to create? Because I think that if you start from a place where you're really passionate about it, it's going to be sustainable and you're going to be able to keep that up. If you find something that you absolutely hate or it's just a grind, you're probably not going to keep up with that. Also, I would just experiment and figure out, what has good engagement, what has good ROI, and really lean into that. I think that kind of puts you in a good starting spot.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Taylor just said. I think that there will be a time when you're trying to create content that you're just tired of it and don't want to do it anymore. So doing something that you do like doing will help with that. The other thing I would add is if you can, start thinking about where your customers are. Your ideal customer, if they are on Facebook or they are on YouTube or they like whatever that is, that's another place where if you can combine what you're passionate about with a platform where your customers already are living and spending time, then I think that can be really powerful.
And I'm just going to echo what they said, but with like a little story kind of, I guess. So this morning I did the pitch with PPI and Henry Gracie, and the product I chose was the Quick Flip bag. And the reason why I did that was because I have this jujitsu story, right? And I'm passionate about it, and people know that about me. So it's an easy story for me to tell. So when we're talking about content, it's easy for your true self to kind of shine through when it is something that you're passionate about. So yeah, do what you like. I mean, if it's something that you're feeling awkward about, you might do it once and it might get easier, but it's grueling. Content isn't always fun either. Sometimes it's a lot. And yeah, so.
Yeah. Thank you. For me, I'm a big believer that people are going through a lot of stress. For me, my passion is really trying to help elevate people, making them feel good, making them understand that, we're all going through a lot of rough stuff. And, I do a blog called 30 Seconds to Greatness. And that blog is, I think I get people that call me all the time and said, boy, I really needed that today. And so that, for me, that's the juice for me. When I have somebody say that, it makes a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and what Cliff made me think, somebody just won something. Cliff reminded me, it's like when you're doing that, I think so many times it's really easy to create content that is more salesy. And I think and what Cliff is talking about is providing value, giving them something that gives them value. And if you start with a heart of service, then you'll probably get better engagement and you'll have more fun doing it.
Thank you. And then just to kind of spin off of that, I mean, we talked about doing something that you're passionate about, so it's not as much of a chore. But there are times for anybody that creates content where you're just like, oh my God, I have to write that blog, or I have to record another video, or I just don't feel like doing it this week. So where do you go for your inspiration or to recharge those batteries when you're feeling like, should I really be doing this? You want to start, Cliff?
Sure, I don't mind. So for me, I know this is kind of maybe trite, but I'm a big fan of creativity and packaging. I talk a lot on that. And sometimes when I get stale, I Pinterest packaging ideas. And all of a sudden I'll go, wow. So I have a friend of mine, I've coached before, and she's always saying, what do I post on? I'm going, have you been in this industry? I mean, there's so much to post on. So she came up with this great post that she does called, Can You Believe They Made This? And I said, with everything, the way technology is changing all the time, you walk around and you're saying, I mean, we all say
I
it. Can
know.
you believe they made this, right? So that kind of thing really, I think, resonates with people. It's a little bit different.
I'll jump in. Yeah, so for inspiration, I mean, I have sort of outside of our industry people I listen to, right? So the Gary V's of the world, the Casey Neistats, the people who have a different perspective. The other piece I'd also say is, while inspiration is important and sometimes you can get stale, sometimes the best inspiration for me is just to keep going, right? I think sometimes just like, we don't always feel like working out either, but I think the best thing to do when you're feeling like that is probably to work out, right? And I think the same thing is true with content. It's like forcing yourself to do that. Sometimes you put yourself in a space, and even when you don't feel it, sometimes you can still create things that are good, but you just have to show up.
Yeah. All right. And that leads nicely into this next question about how we often hear about you need to be consistent. It is so important to be consistent, but there's some differing views out there. There are some people, and I was listening yesterday to your online marketing course, and Javier was talking about how he is not at all consistent. He does not go by algorithms. He just posts when the moment strikes him, and he has something that he thinks is post worthy. So where do you guys stand on consistency? Do you feel that it's important? Is it not important?
Oh, you want to go, Taylor? Go ahead. I'll just real quick. So I am not consistent, but I wish I was more. And I think the fact of when you're doing social media, it humanizes you, right? So if I'm inspired by something, or if I want to post something, I'm just going to post it. I have too much going on to be like, I'm going to post on TikTok every Friday at 4:00, and that's not even going to be enough. If you really wanted to be an actual TikTok influencer, you have to do it every single day, multiple times a day. And it almost takes the fun out of it. I like doing it because I have fun doing it. And my customers see that. My colleagues see that. The industry sees that. And it humanizes me, and it makes me my own person. So I don't think you have to be consistent unless your goal is to be like, I have to be the top influencer on TikTok. Then the only way those algorithms are going to pick up is if you're being consistent. But I mean, is it real then?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, Meg. I would say we actually have to take a step back and figure out, what do we mean by being consistent? So when you're consistent, it's okay to maybe post infrequently or kind of sporadically all over the place, as long as your value as a personal brand remains consistent as well. So I think that as long as you're true to yourself, you are, transparent in that way, then you can post whenever. I will say though, I have found that consistency is beneficial for me. It's not beneficial for my audience. So it holds me accountable to what I need. I mean, I feel so bad every time I submit any of my articles. It's always the last hour. It's super late at night. I need that pressure or something. But if I didn't do it, I would let it slip through the cracks. So, kind of that same approach with certain elements of what I put out into the world. But I do agree. I think a lot of it is just when you're inspired.
So for old guys, consistency is imperative, right? Because otherwise, and I know I'm older than all three of these folks here, all four of them. But but I'm telling you that for me, consistency holds me accountable, like you said, Taylor. And I think by doing that, I think that my view is the audience comes to depend on that.
Yep.
They want to hear. I know that you're very consistent, Kirby, with your
Monday Minute.
Your Money Minute, right?
Yeah, every Monday.
It would be
So-
weird if it came out on Tuesday.
It's every Monday, right? I don't know.
But it's interesting when you're consistent. If you miss it a day, people are like, "What the heck? Where is it?"
I know.
Right? So
Yeah.
So I think that I'm probably the hardliner on this. Yes, consistency matters. Yes, it's really important. I can't be knocked off that particular soapbox. Now, what I would say though is it depends on your own goals, right? So for me, exactly what you said. But I think it's good for both. I think it does hold me accountable because, by God, come hell or high water, on a Wednesday, there's going to be a Delivering Marketing Joy, and there has been for 8 years. But that's transformed. It took a long time for people to start noticing it. And so I think, number one, it helps hold me accountable. But number two, I think it does build trust and integrity with your audience. And so now, do I post consistently on every platform in every place? No. I'm consistent in specific places, and I think that allows me to be a little bit more organic in other platforms, if that makes sense. Because I'm like a Monday Minute, Delivering Marketing Joy, and Promote Front on the podcast. Those happen at exactly those times. Everything else, I'm kind of all over the place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you said something that got me thinking, Kirby, to a lot of people. The prize wheel over there is amazing.
I want what she has.
Yeah.
I'll have a dish of that.
Yeah.
Right now, actually.
So you said something about how you've been doing Delivering Marketing Joy for 8 years, which is a long time. And people start to put out content, and I think they expect to post and have a following and have 1 million likes and have all of this stuff happen. So I guess what advice could you give for people who are starting out? I would think you'd have to have a bit of a tough skin and you'd have to have some patience, but talk a little bit about that. Like when you started out, were you feeling really defeated because nobody read your posts or nobody was watching your videos, or how do you like get through that and over that hump?
Do you want to start?
Okay.
Jump in it, and then I'll be quick, and then you jump at it. So yeah, a couple things. Number one, yes, I love it when clients come to me and say, I want to create a viral video. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. So that's a great idea. Never thought of that. I always say that it's more important to create value than be viral, right? And the way that you do that is do consistency. And it's funny, I think you'll like this. I talk about fitness and content in the same way. Most people start content as like a fitness program. We're going to do it for a week, and I want to have 6-pack abs and 1 million followers. And the reality of it is it takes a long time. So number one, prepare for it to be a long journey. Number two, like when I did Delivering Marketing Joy, when I first started it, I had heard a statistic. I don't even know if it was true, but it inspired me at the time. They said that most web shows never make it to episode 5. So
You were gonna say this.
yeah. And so I had 5 in the can before we started. And it was really good because then I wasn't scrambling to do the next one. And I was able to be like, okay, what worked and what didn't work? And so, yes, number one, plan on the long term. Number two, it's not going to pay off right away. It's a long-term branding game. And then, yeah, do what you can to prepare yourself have a few of them lined up.
Yeah, I would say if it was easy to do, wouldn't everybody have a successful online brand? You know, we would all be super well known and have, so it's like you have to put the time and the effort to earn that.
Yeah.
And I think that knowing that from the get-go is super important. One thing that I find has kind of helped me in getting, more engagement and just ensuring that I don't feel depleted is making sure that my content leads with entertainment first. So having an entertainment element in some way, and then educate second and sell last. So don't even get close to that, so it's okay when, the article might be a little silly or have kind of a title that feels like, oh, that's what you're talking about emojis. It's not something that you might always think about. But then, making sure too that what you're putting out there is digestible by people outside of this industry too. So I think, we all kind of make the joke, like nobody knows what the hell this industry even is. Like my parents just learned what I do for a living and I don't even know if they have like the full picture. And so what an opportunity that we have when we have these platforms to be able to speak to who our primary audience is, right? Our industry, but then also take the opportunity to help the people in our lives understand what we do and also what this industry is. I think it'll help us grow the longevity, bring, new blood into it, and just not be so mysterious when we're posting.
Yeah, I would say that one thing that I believe is that relevance resonates. So if you're relevant with what you're putting out there in terms of content, it's certainly going to resonate. And when that happens, that spark is the thing that wants people to keep coming back.
I have to agree with all of you actually on that. I have nothing to counter on that, but to echo it, it's everything that you guys said. Going back to the consistency, you do have to have some consistency in your life to be accountable. I definitely shaded right over that, but I don't know. I don't remember the last question. But we are every Wednesday. We just hit our over 200 episodes, which is so exciting, and it's we have the same, people that are watching it every week, and then we have new people every week, which is really exciting because we want to hit those audiences. And the hardest part is coming up with the topics, right? Trying to find something that's relevant, that's entertaining, and that's educational, and that applies to this industry. So it has to fill all those buckets, and that's really hard sometimes. It really is.
Well, it's interesting you say that. That's one of the biggest questions I get from our content contributors is, what should I write about? Or what do people want to hear about? And it is hard to come up with topics. And where do you go? Like, how do you generate those topics that are going to be of interest to other people?
So actually, Kirby and I are in a content creator group for this industry.
Can I
So-
join?
Actually, but it's really good because we might all have this little nugget of an idea, right? And then we'll bring it to the group, and then that nugget explodes into an entire fundraising idea or an entire I don't know. It's really awesome, and the people, we've all become like family. So yeah, I would say I go there a lot, and then outside the industry, and then TikTok, looking for trends just that are fun, that fit your personality. Yeah, you just gotta find something that fits your personality. It's the biggest thing. Educational, relevant, and then salesy last. And my salesy is I'll have an Easter egg. And by an Easter egg, it's I might be wearing an SNS shirt or a hat or something that's SNS related will be in my video. And I'm not selling it, but I'm wearing it, I'm showing it, or whatever. So yeah.
I love that you mentioned TikTok, Meg, because that was going to be my answer. And I'm I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but you know what? Loud and proud. I do look on TikTok all the time because that's how you understand what's happening with Gen Z trends, what's going on there. And then also the second thing is during the month, I try to remember and write down if something pisses me off. Because usually you can follow that trail and find a topic of why that made you mad. And I feel like you can kind of yeah, for sure.
I like that. I get pissed off really quick. I could have a bucket
Okay.
of content.
Yeah. So now Meg has a new Trello
I
board.
know.
that
Oh
she's
my
gonna do.
God.
Yeah. And so what I would say too is at this point, most of us are fairly well down the road in where we're coming up with ideas. But if we're talking to someone who just wants to start, the other thing is it goes back to the relevance, right? Think of the questions that your customers ask you all the time that you find yourself answering, and create content around answering that.
Great.
I'll parlay off of what you said,
Yeah.
Kirby. I think that for me, as I coach people, the questions that I ask people, what's troubling you? What is the angst that's bothering you? And when I hear that, it gives me an opportunity to do some deep dive research on maybe it's technology that's out there or whatever the case may be. But asking probing questions really does help give you a lot of topic opportunities there for sure.
All right. And moving on, as we're all aware, there is a lot of content out there, tons. So it's one thing to post, but it's a whole nother thing to push it. So what are you doing personally to get your content to be seen, to be consumed, to be interacted with?
I'm going to be short with this.
Okay.
I asked my listeners, or I asked the people that read, to comment and to repost it. I just asked for the favor.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would say, number one, once you post it, groups. So putting into groups where it makes sense. So for example, I'm always posting Delivering Marketing Joy in the Promotional Products Professionals page. And then the other thing I see that is kind of crazy to me is putting the social back in social media is if somebody comments and takes the time to comment, dude, engage with them. It's so I find it rude when people don't. And so if you
Are you too good to reply to
Right,
my
it's
oh my
so
God, I
good.
loved your show.
yeah, that's a
That's a turn off.
I-
Huge turn off if they don't.
I always say that you should treat people talk about treating social media and content differently than real life. I actually totally disagree with that. I think if we treat social media more like we do real three-dimensional life, it would be better. You wouldn't go to a networking event, or you shouldn't go to a networking event and be like, hey, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me. You will not get invited back, right? But we do that all the time on social media. And so if somebody said, hey, I really like your dress, would you just walk away? Right? Treat it. Yeah. Okay, fair point. But the idea of when you get a compliment or somebody engages with you, engage back.
That's great point. I would say, so I mean, I try to post it everywhere that I possibly can. So I've invested in creating platforms for LinkedIn, Facebook. I completely agree about the Facebook groups. We have so many in this industry. continue amplifying that. Also, I think sometimes people are like, oh, you can't post a link on Instagram. Yes, you can via stories.
Stories, yeah.
You can definitely do that. I feel like that's kind of underutilized. Also, I have found this strictly based on the data that I get from kind of the insights on social, but also with Promo Corner articles, I can see all of the views. And I have found that when I collaborate or bring somebody in to have a quote, that content performs so much better. So I just had my most recent article was about trade show tips, and that did fairly well.
That was an
compared-
amazing article.
Oh,
I
thank
loved
you.
it. I
Thank
loved
you.
it.
Well, so I realized I wasn't yeah, oh yeah. Real life interaction. I love it. So I knew that I was not the best person to give advice from a supplier perspective. I've never been a supplier, so why would I step into that role? So I pulled a lot of people in to ask for some, quick tips. And then they ended up sharing that on their platforms because it wasn't just my content, it was our content together.
100%. Great advice. I love that.
So yeah, actually, again, I'm going to play off all of you guys. What you said, always add that call to action. What did you think? What would you do differently? Or whatever. Asking a question to get that engagement and then engage back. And then, oh yes, the collaboration. So when we do the Industry Insider, every week we tackle a topic in the industry. It's nerdy news. We bring on a guest who is an expert on that topic. So when we post that, we are posting it everywhere and we're tagging them. Again, we want them to repost and engage. Then you get a whole slew of their coworkers, their clients, everybody engaging, or at least watching it and getting that content out there. So it's really important to tag the people that have helped you put that content out. That's super important because you want to make sure that you give them that credit as well. Because again, it is our content. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's why all of you have content that is doing so well, is because you put in that extra effort to push it. You don't just submit a piece of content
And walk
and
away.
let us
Yeah.
just like,
Why would you do that?
It's too-
what
it's too
people
much
do
content.
it, Kirby. Yes, it is. Yes, people do it. So,
Aw.
and then explain to our audience before we close how creating content has helped you each to build your own personal brand.
I'll go first on this. So my Twitter handle is I am the brand. But you know what? We've all probably been at different companies in this industry, and it comes down to building your own brand so you can take it with you, right? I always wear my SNS hat very proudly. I love this company, but when it comes down to it, I'm building my brand. I want, that engagement, that whatever. So I really think you have to just kind of focus on you, your story, and then people will buy from you because they like you. You've established that relationship. They trust you. Social media does a great job of humanizing us, good and bad. So, yeah. So have some thick skin. If you post something controversial and you're afraid to read the comments, don't. Maybe don't interact with the bad ones. Don't, yeah. That's my advice on that.
I'll go. Yeah, I'd say, a couple things. When you do this for a long time, I enjoy doing speaking and writing books and stuff like that. And so it certainly helps with that. But honestly, let's say from a distributor's perspective, what I found is that I went from being a salesperson to a marketer in my customers' eyes. Like all of a sudden, it went from them calling me 2 weeks before the event because they needed something really fast to calling me 6 months before the event saying, I have an event, let's talk about what I need to do. They just perceive me differently. And so I'm at the front of the line, not the end of the line, because I put myself out there in that way.
For me, I would say that it's really just helped me expedite connections. So there's a lot of people that I realize I have only ever met like 1 or 2 times, but I really feel like they are my friends.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, right? So it's the content you consume, and it's also the content that you put out. And I live in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota. What I do is in the content that I create, like through videos and through, photos, whatever, I bring my audience into my home, outside. They know my dog, they know my husband, they know, where I spend my time on the weekends. I feel like it is such a vulnerable place. And that is something I should have mentioned this a little earlier for another question, but yeah, like you need to be okay being a little bit vulnerable, and that doesn't mean oversharing. I think sometimes people think that they are like the same word, but they are not. It just means that you have to be okay with blurring those lines a little bit and welcoming your audience in, because it really does build an extra level of trust.
Agree.
I would think, I think what you're all saying is, I believe that authenticity is absolutely key. And everything that you're talking about transparency and just being you, I think that that really resonates. And I can tell you, phony sticks out like a really really quick. So if you can just be authentic, like you said, vulnerable, I think that that's very compelling, and people want to be associated with it. I remember doing a speaking engagement once, and I was very transparent and honest about something during the presentation. And my buddy came up to me, goes, "You shouldn't be that honest. You're kind of like dogging yourself." I said, "Look, if I'm up here trying to be aloof and I'm above everybody, I'm not. So I just need to be authentic." And I think that that embraces that audience, whether you're writing, you're blogging, you're videotape, whatever you're doing. It really does make a significant difference when you're authentic.
Yes, absolutely. So these 4 content rock stars all have content on promojournal.com. You can check out their columns, their blogs, their videos, theirs, and many, many others. So if you have not been to promojournal.com, check it out. We have a brand new platform that is very sexy. I think you will be impressed by it. So thank you all for being here today and sharing,
guys.
and get out there and create content.
Thank you.